Hi, guys, and welcome to this cracker of an episode of Brewing e-commerce. And I'm privileged and honored to have Noelle with us. Welcome, Noelle.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Noelle, to be honest, right, I was amazed and I was like spellbound looking at your profile. And there's not a lot of brands I've heard of who are not associated with you in some of the other fashion, right? You're a veteran in the industry. You've worked with the largest and the largest brands that we can think of, and it's been awesome. As in, your journey is something that we can all gain so much from, and we really would like to go very deep in understanding how it started, where you are, etc., etc. So brace yourself. You're gonna get a lot of questions today, and don't tell me that I didn't warn you.
Okay. Okay. No, happy to share that as much knowledge as I can.
Perfect. So just for starters, Noel, I'd request you to kind of, just introduce yourself to everybody listening in and, tell us, or why brands think that you're really awesome, which I know you are.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I started my career in fashion actually a very long time ago, and started in fashion retail because that's what I loved. And I started that career in Harrods, and then went into department store world, and ended up accidentally in beauty. And for those of you that have done both, you'll know that beauty is unfortunately a little bit of an addiction, because it's such an interesting business model, but it's such a personal business, with the consumer as well. And if you love working with people and with customers, beauty is such a wonderful category. And so, I worked in department stores. I ran big cosmetics departments. So I was working with customers every day and big teams and big brands. And then Estee Lauder would give me a call probably every other year and say, would you come and work with us? And so eventually it was the right time. I worked with them, and I did lots of different jobs at Estee Lauder. And anybody, I think, wanting a career in beauty, you really, it's so good to be versatile and learn what the whole picture looks like. So, amazing company to work for. I worked with them as an area manager, a trainer, a marketing. I was an advertising exec for a while, which was a strange one because I didn't really understand all of that, but learnt. And I ended up really launching and developing Estee Lauder in Boots. It never used to be in Boots, believe it or not. And, that was a huge kind of piece of work, working directly, with the Lauder family actually at some point, because it was such a huge move. And learned so much from them, but kind of got the indie bug when they started to buy up indie brands. And I remember being at a conference where Leonard Lauder said, if you can't beat them, buy them. um, and, you then started to see Lauder building out their portfolio of brands. And the brand that I worked closely with, under the Lauder umbrella, was Jo Malone. And as a British founder, it meant that I got to work directly with her as opposed to, a founder based in another country. And that was so amazing, to work so closely with this incredible talent, instinctive, strong businesswoman, who had built out this business that is still going from strength to strength today. And, I then went on to be Estee Lauder sales director, but I really hungered for this, working directly with a founder and being able to have influence across a whole business and really building in the foundations. So yes, so after 11 years at Estee Lauder, I went on to do my own business in 2005, working directly with lots of indie brands. So yeah, that was a big change at that point.
Wow. So I'm smitten from all these brands and all the kind of work that you've done, to say the least. As in, they're super impressive. Noel, anybody who is in the beauty space would kind of die to even get involved and associated with the kind of work that you've done.
Well, yeah,
Um.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
I think you learn so much when you have those opportunities to work with some of the incredible vision that some of these founders have, but then help put in the jigsaw that helps kind of click everything into place. And I've worked with over 35. I did a count the other day, and I've worked with over
Nice.
35 founders, including, more recently Charlotte Tilbury, where we worked for the first 3 years. Trinny Woodall for Trinny London, Jamie Genevieve on Vive, and across all brands, fragrance, skincare, hair care, as well as makeup. I really love all of the different categories for their own reasons. But it's a changing world in beauty right now,
Right.
as it is everywhere.
It is a changing world, beauty, and I have a lot of questions on that because I come from the changing world of the beauty side of the world. Let me put it that way, right? Um, and we work with a lot of brands, and I think we all understand that there's a huge influx of new brands which were created right before the pandemic or around the pandemic time as well, right? So who they are existing in the market for the past 5 to 7 years, kind of a thing now. And uh, there are a few things which I understand are happening in the market, Noel. I'd like you to correct me. I'd like you to add on this, right? So you very rightly pointed out there is like a good segment of niche products which are coming out, right? And the big brands always think like this, that if once the smaller brands attain a scale and they have a quality and they have ingredients, then they kind of acquire them to enrich their portfolio, etc. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to talk about that part of it. How should a beauty brand start from 0 to 1 and the 1 to 10 journey, so that you scale enough, you're lucrative, and you're big enough, right? So that's what we're going to do. um, so one of the constant feedback and one of the biggest question that a lot of brands I get as being in e-commerce, and we work with a lot of brands in the UK, a lot of brands in India as well, is imagine they are in a situation that they launched a product, they have like a decent percentage in the market where they are, so in the UK or maybe in India, etc., and they've started to look international, right? Because they know that they want scale, they want different kind of average order values, different revenue streams, etc., etc. And most of brands would not even would consider this as a very, very daunting task,
Mm,
which is operationally expensive, time consuming, and always scared of where to spend the money, rather than all of them, just majority of them just end up spending the money in the local country, but they can't expand beyond the point because
yeah.
that's what the market is. Are you seeing this kind of a trend? Are you seeing brands who are wanting to go beyond the country of origin a lot more and more?
Yeah. I think they have to. I think that's it's almost a necessity when you start a brand. Yes, you can start a brand and be strong in your local country, but if you don't right at the very start, think about, well, how am I going to internationalize this? Because it's a digital world. You know that so well. Digital from a social perspective, the conversations are strong across markets. And how do you um, really think about who your customer is, but then where your customer is a really important thought process early doors, because it's not easy. It's so not easy to launch a brand wherever you launch it, because it is such a crowded market. It's very saturated, and you have an overwhelmed consumer. In immersion markets, you can kind of grab hold of a trend and be a first mover. But really, in established markets, it's so competitive that you really not only need to know your consumer, but you really need to focus in on your USP, your story, and what you're offering. And that's really the starting point. So, it's not easy. Not that I'm ever being negative, but I think it's really important for everybody to like really understand that, beauty is an amazing opportunity for an entrepreneur, but it's complex and it's personal to the customer there. And so, yeah, I think it's really thinking from, if you can start to think about it really early on, then you're carving a path to grow in your own market, but thinking ahead of how am I going to take this elsewhere, particularly when you have, a very specific customer in your own market. Where else are they? Or are
Yeah,
you going to evolve, that customer so that you can globalize?
yeah. I think you put it very nicely, Noel. And the way I try to share this with my brands is, if in the UK you go to a top supermarket, right, a grocery store, and the kind of section of food which is of different countries keeps on increasing and
Yes.
decreasing.
Yes, it does. It's really good.
Yeah, and a really nice representation of
Hmm.
the demand. And I've always realized this, that some of the beauty industry founders that I've spoken to, they are so confident about that nobody knows my customer better than me, which you rightly said that excuse me, it's so personal and you really need to get in the depth of understanding what it is. I think that niche of trying to go and create that market even outside their traditional home market with the whole digital technology now is so critical, and I think you summarized it so nicely. And they all have to do it, just because that's just the way growth levers should be pulled at, right? So yeah, you've scaled brands, you've launched brands in international markets as well. They were established brands, they were brands that were small, but you were trying to take them big. um, what are the factors, in your opinion, Noel, which a founder should kind of consider when they start thinking of trying to start this exercise?
I think it always starts with a story. It always starts with something personal to the founder, and that might be, I personally have seen this opportunity or this gap. But
Yeah,
I think, in such a huge world of information, people need to know who to trust. And when it comes from a story that is personal to a founder, that is also a gap in the market, or you just might do it better. That's your starting point of your, like the core of your foundational cornerstone of your brand. And the next part is who cares, which always sounds like a horrible phrase, but who cares about your brand? Who cares about this mission? Because sometimes it's so personal, it's actually only a small group of people. Other times you've got a really focused segment. Other times it's more universal. So I think really knowing your story, its uniqueness and its personal nature to you, that you can then tell in so many different ways, because storytelling and content is the way you drive your business, today, whether that is on, various ways on a kind of YouTube, where you can tell that story with a little more explanation and express it more differently than you would on a kind of TikTok 10 seconds, something or other that just grabs the attention. So that story needs to be defined and then carved up. But really, who cares is the next point. And then where are they, in your home market and beyond. But I think something that often doesn't happen is, how does that customer journey form within your range? That's also what's really important. So
interesting.
what's your hero product that really speaks to that standout philosophy, that is going to not just become your bestseller, but actually an industry bestseller? If you've got something like that that you can really harness, then that can become your bread and butter in terms of your volume sales, but it can also become the destination footfall for new customer, as well as retention and loyalty. And you halo that across your brand. So it's thinking about, you've got your brand story, you know who your customer is, how are they going to come into your brand, and what is the product that's going to get them there, and then how you personalize that journey through a regime of multiple products. You need to kind of really map that out, and it really is, I just always draw lots of squiggles and a hierarchy of products, and then I draw the hierarchy. It all starts as a bit of a mess, but then you start to distill that so that you have a focused message that you can then roadmap. I call it clarity of forward direction, which sounds really dull. But often, a lot of founders, you've got so much to think about that you can be spinning too many plates at once and you actually become a little bit paralyzed. I think once you can really nut down the focus of all of those elements, it helps you and a team understand this is our mission, this is our plan, off we go. And anybody, third party, anybody is getting the same story. And the customer is getting consistency. And, in a world of, too much information and overwhelming noise, when she is clear who you are, what you stand for, and how to shop you with ease, that's when you'll start to get the repeat and the lesser drop off. If you're too complicated, people just give up.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty nicely put, Noel. And I was also thinking from a customer's point of view,
Mm,
when you went about that saying all this was, when I want to look at some product, when my mind is confused as well. I'm looking at different options. I'm trying to do different things. Then slowly, depending on how the brand guides me and takes my hand and take me forward, is where I can distill and crystallize. Okay, let me give it a try. Or this is the solution to the problem that I'm facing. And I think that's what you very nicely explained, because that's the same dilemma for a founder as well, to bring about the message of the brand, which comes with consistency and makes the guys actually buy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And we used to have a phrase when we were developing Charlotte Tilbury. I mean, it's been out there, so I can reveal it, but lots of you might have heard it already. But it really was, easy to choose, easy to use, and easy to gift. Because the problem that Charlotte was solving was
yeah,
how to take this amazing Hollywood glamour and incredible skill of an industry artist
yeah,
to make up overwhelmed and confused customer in finding what was right for you. And if you make something easy, you can still have all
yeah,
the glamour around it, which sure, clearly she has kept, but if you make something easy, then the customer is not only going to take that first step, but she's going to convert with confidence.
yeah.
So, that's, you have to sometimes stand back, and just because you understand it doesn't mean everybody else does.
And that's so hard. That is so
Yeah.
hard. I'm sure it happens to me all the time, and I tell my team also all the time. You know what? Because we are sleeping, drinking, breathing our product.
Yes.
It's so easy for us to get on a call with a customer or send something else and assume that they understand, but they would get like less than 5% of what we're trying to communicate.
Yes, it's true.
And
It's really true. It's really
yeah,
true.
that's the
You
kind
know,
of golden rule which I think even brands should follow from there. That makes sense.
yeah.
There's one question which is pretty controversial in nature, and I would love to have your take on that, Noel. Is, for a lot of brands, I always think that there has to be just one thing that stands out for them, right?
Mhm.
Because of simplifying the brand, simplifying the messaging, as you very rightly and nicely explained. In my opinion, it's like you have to stand for that one thing and just communicate that. And if your prospective buyer sticks with it, then they'll consider you. And for beauty, what should that be? Because what should be the differentiation from your brand? Like apparel cannot, in my opinion, say that I'm sustainable, that's why I'm different.
Yeah.
Like food cannot say that I'm organic, that's why I'm different.
Mhm.
Right? What's your take on the beauty side for this?
I think it's quite complex and quite personal to the brand, but you're absolutely right. Things like sustainability are a tick. Yes, you should be. Things like, cruelty free, all of those things don't give you unique standout anymore. They're like table stakes. Um, uh,
Exactly.
but, that's why I always come back to the story. And I always get, when I work with founders, I just want them to talk to me about, why did you start this? What was your passion? Tell me, right, what's the moment that this even occurred to you that this was an opportunity? Because often it's that moment at the start that is the core, or that will become the core USP for you that you can build from. And it could be lots of different things, but increasingly it's going to be about your values. It can be about an ingredient. It can be you've discovered a new ingredient. It could be about your packaging today that has got a unique element, a refillable or, a recyclable, but something different about that.
Yeah.
It can be all of those. But I think brands today, if they're going to launch, you should be seeding that brand before you actually just put your website up. So how do you seed that brand? You seed that brand with social and with building a community that loves the story that you're telling and the conversation that you're having. That will then make them anticipate the product that you're going to launch. If that product is rubbish and doesn't connect with the story, of course, they're not going to buy it again. But
True.
actually building your audience up front and building the demand and the conversation up front is where and anybody is going to look at that. An investor is going to look at that. A retailer is going to look at that. It's like, what's your audience side? Who are you talking to? What's their engagement? Are they creating content? Have you done activations with your community that are meaningful? And customers won't just buy values. They won't. We talk about sustainability. Everybody does. But when it comes down to it, something completely beautiful and desirable will sway them.
Yeah.
Price might sway
True.
them, if they have only so much money in their bank accounts. So all of
Yeah.
those things will sway them. But your story is what will stop the scroll or stop the step. And
Yeah.
so, harnessing that power right at the start and knowing that and being consistent. Too many founders start with something brilliant and get too influenced on the way. I mean, of course, if it's not working, you change and you pivot, but don't abandon something that is strong because you meet an advisor and you meet somebody else and and you dilute it down and try to be all things to all people. I think you just need to have that clear clarity, and it will start in your story and your message.
Amazing, amazing. That they're really gold nuggets, right? For people to remember the mission that they started on. West, it improves, and you add on to it, right? But core value, and what I love the most, which I think a lot of people don't do correctly, is they think we'll build the audience once we're ready,
Yeah,
but the audience needs to be built much more before that. And so nicely you put it, Noel, that once you come up with the idea, then start trying to reach out to people, connect with them, because when you will be ready, and hopefully some of them will come, agree with what you've done, and then they will become your early ambassadors also to talk about it.
exactly. And I think, those, it's this whole co-create together, create a brand together. So if
Yeah.
you've got your idea and you test that with your audience, you've already got reviews, you've already got people who feel that they're on your team, and I don't know if you've seen Shwetank, but the Trini tribes from Trini, London. So
Mhm.
just as a story there, Trini, when she was starting her brand, had a TV audience, but her social following was only about 4,000, 4,500, something like that.
Okay.
And she didn't have the funding, but she did talk to them and she got them to be her models. Some of them came to work for her. Some of them worked for her for free because they so loved what she was doing and what
Yeah.
she stood for. And there was this connected theme of, actually, and it's more than this, but it was the older woman that maybe people haven't the industry isn't talking to anymore, that felt like, oh my God, here's this inspiring woman that is talking to us, gets us, and we want to help her make her brilliant product even more successful. And then they became this tribe of
Yeah.
fans that were all over the world, from Alaska to India to
Wow.
Middle East, who before we launched would basically talk about the brand. They would seed the brand in the market before you launch in that market. Now, she was lucky enough to have this fan group, and because her TV show had been in lots of different countries, there were fan groups in different countries. But it's the same principle of build your audience in your market, and then your
Mhm.
next market, and then your next market. And we did similar things
Mhm.
with Charlotte Tilbury. Build the excitement before you launch the product and the anticipation. In Charlotte, we would only let them buy Magic Cream and Wonder Glow, They couldn't buy anything else at first because you've got to have great makeup. You've got to have great skin before you're going to have great makeup. But people were like, well, I've got the skin now. I need the makeup,
Yeah, no, but
and it
yeah, what
just kind of
and it builds
mushroomed
up.
as a result.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it builds up very nicely. And once you get them hooked, then that's where the repeat purchase comes in, and all your matrix and KPI
Yeah.
start looking at. Yeah,
Yeah. And they're happy. They're really happy. They've had a great experience. They feel involved in your brand and they're not just a customer anymore. They're part of your team.
brilliant. I think the story also that you share, Noel, just goes to say it's a testament of the founder's will to bring about the story and get that audience in place, and reaping the results of that for everyone to learn from as well. So um I you know given that I'm hearing all these told all these stories and all these executional strategy talking points from you, I think for me you're at the perfect curves of indie brands, as you mentioned, who want to expand, right? So let's take in my context, because this is the kind of bridge that I think you can help them with, is a brand in the UK wanting to go to India or beyond, or a brand in India who's trying to come to the UK and beyond, etc. I think they have a lot to learn and gain working along with you, based on your expertise and what you've done and executed for the biggest brands. Um, how would you suggest they take the first baby steps on trying to do this?
Yeah, I think if they've already launched their brand in India as an example, so they've got their product, they've got a customer, they know their customer, and they've kind of proved that this has a receptive audience. Um, they need to really review their brand and their product for a different audience. So, for example, if they're going to come to a Western market, what is that what is that consumer looking for? And that could be different. That could be a difference in the way the story is told. It can still be your story, but the way it's told might need to change,
Yeah,
so that it really lands well. It's understanding is your and there's a whole operational piece. It's the compliance of your ingredients. It's, EU and UK combined are some of the hardest, toughest regulations. Operations in terms of shipping, all of those things. You can have a great idea, but unless you've got your kind of operations sorted, then that can also be tricky. So understanding that from the outset is really important. But really thinking about your customer in your chosen market, what's trending, what are they talking about, what's the noise, having a look at some of the top discussions that are going on, the trends, Google Trends as well in a market, for the brand is also really important. But also thinking about your range structure. What's best selling? Would that be a bestseller here? Because obviously needs can be slightly different. The way that a customer buys into beauty might be different in a different market. So we're not saying completely change your brand, but I work with a lot of founders by doing a brand clinic. That's the first base, and that can be from an expert who's got an idea, who wants to build a brand. So how do we take that incredible vision and structure that? Or it could be with an established brand who wants to either reset where they're at or reset because they're moving into different markets. And in that clinic, there'll be a lot of conversation about your story, your customer, your range, your trading activation, and then what does that look like as an active plan, an action plan, and what's the distribution? What's the retailer looking for? Or are you, just going to look at D2C initially? And if so, that's a tricky thing too.
yeah,
That's a tricky thing as well in terms of building out the audience. So, how do you grow that audience up front would be part of that communication plan. So there's steps there. So I would kind of go through all of those elements. And there's some, it's not just me, there's some amazing people in the market that can help and support, and you can guide to those people to evolve a team of the right person for the right brand. But
Yeah.
it's expensive. There is all of those things to consider. There's the first part of a plan, and sometimes actually getting the answers, knowing what you don't know already. So filling your knowledge gap, is an easy first step consultation that can help you understand before you take next steps and invest more heavily. I
Yeah,
think
but
it's important.
for me, I know it's expensive. It can be time consuming, operationally heavy, etc. But it's like we trying to have a strategy of plan A, plan B, rather than just going and spending all the money without
Yes,
understand.
exactly.
So it's much better to do that, to have a control spend, because maybe at the end of it you realize that no, it's not worth it, or maybe the amount of money that it takes for me is not worth the ROI.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think the UK is an interesting market because, it's so aligned with the US. It's aligned with different countries in Europe, but it's also quite aligned with the Middle East, in terms of being a launch pad that is more accessible and more
Yeah,
affordable to really learn about, the customer in these other markets as well. So and it's strong positioning. I think it's got great credibility if you launch in the UK to be a platform to then go into that next stage of complexity in the US, which
yeah,
is really
because
expensive and really huge, and each state is like a different
yes,
country, and
yeah,
very
which
demanding retailers, in terms of what they expect from you. So kind of learning your craft a little bit first in the UK is slightly easier. And then you've got the proof of concept to be able to go out to some of those other markets.
yeah, funny enough you mentioned this now, because I was talking to a couple of brand owners in India, and they were like, we want to launch in the US. And I was having this very similar thoughts to this, that why would you want to go and launch it in a country straight away, which has so many different states, rules, regulations. You really have to figure things out. It's going to be majorly expensive.
Mhm.
And they're like, no, no, the market side is huge. I'm like, yes, I completely get it. But even where India is right now and where UK is right now, the average order values are not very different.
Yeah,
So, from the price perspective, you're not that far. Go and try to, do it in a market which is much controlled, learn from it, and
yeah,
then understand if you're ready for an even bigger pie.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I think you bring forward some really good point for founders to ponder on market to choose here.
Yeah, and it's always which market does your brand have most resonance in as well, because there is definitely, if you think about beauty as it used to be, beauty is not a shallow category at all. It's very personal. It's connected with health, and as the last few years and the education that different brands have brought to the table, as a category, it's grown and grown and grown. Beauty has blurred the lines into health, into nutrition, into fitness, even into mental well-being. And so, you've got a really interesting playing field in terms of who your brand can be, who your
Yeah,
audience is, and therefore where you trade and how you trade your brand today. It's
yeah,
definitely a strong category with huge growth in India as well as in other markets as well, and an interest in South Asian brands, I think, coming through in the UK that's exciting.
indeed, indeed. There's another point that you mentioned before, is a lot of these smaller brands have launched always digital first in the past few years, given how the market were, right? Now that the market's changed again, a lot of them are going to the brick and mortar. They're trying to go to the offline retail channels as well. I think in the coming years, is it going to be very important for everybody to be everywhere, or you still think that there are a few brands who can live on just being D2C or being retail only? How do you see this?
I don't think you can just be retail only ever. You know, you have to be omni-channel. You could still be D2C, but I think it's, you know, beauty is a category that, I mean, the majority of customers, you know, I appreciate it varies by brand, but the majority of customers still shop in store. You know, it's still around 80%. And yes, it grew in the pandemic to, you know, 40, 50%, and it will probably continue to grow. Digital is definitely the fastest growth category. However, customers still want to pick up touch, feel, and experience. You know, I do think you have to think really carefully about that strategy. You know, could you be digital as in just social and then in bricks and mortar? Yeah, you could. Today you could. You could say, no, I'm not going to have a website. I'm going to do social and bricks and mortar, or I'm going to do
Yeah,
social and pop up. I think pop up is a really interesting middle ground
yes,
step where you
yeah,
learn from the customer physically in front of
yeah,
you. It's my big bugbear, you know, founders that maybe have never met a customer or think they know their customer, but have only ever talked to them virtually. That's not knowing
yeah,
your customer. You know, you
yeah,
need to be there and in our human interaction, truly have those flowing conversations that tell you so much and
yeah,
build a much deeper relationship with your customer. So yeah, I think omnichannel is not going to go away. The forms that omnichannel will take will definitely change, you
yeah,
know, as digital changes and as, you know, what you do at Kui, you know, in terms of giving the customer a more personalized experience so that she can make confident choice is a huge opportunity when you think conversion is on average 3 to 5% as a good kind of benchmark. Of course, that's going to be a big opportunity on D2C, but that customer is choosing to shop where she can hop on and off, online, offline, into social,
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know, and getting that seamless journey right is your challenge in a multi-channel, multi-generational,
yeah.
multi-market. It's a real big challenge. So know your customer and choose your path, but make it omni-channel always. I think
Wow.
is really important.
No, no. I think this is amazingly put, Noya, very nicely summarized, because uh, the complexity of world is, you have to offer them multi touch points, but
Mm,
then there is the problem of multi attribution.
yeah.
But wherever they think, wherever they are, you need to be
Mm,
present, and somehow this world will combine more and more. It'll be ubiquitous in that respect, but it's not there, and there are challenges.
yes.
But at least from a brand's perspective, I think you put it out very nicely, that you need to think in that direction and solve for it. Be there wherever your customers are.
Yeah, exactly.
So this has been really very insightful, Noel. Thank you so much for all those things. Of the pointers that you put, is a lot of founders would be thinking about them. Some of them they might have thought, some of them maybe they didn't realize they need to think about, and that this gives them the most basic first primer as bullet points to kind of start thinking about it. And of course, if somebody wishes to speak to you, I know you're very open and you help out people as well. So I think they should really get in touch with you. um, but these are so important in terms of growth, and otherwise you'll get tapered, and things will not go well. And
Yeah,
this is not optional anymore. I think it's
yeah,
mandatory for everybody to start thinking.
yeah. No, no, definitely. There, you know, I meet founders who have spent a lot of money in the wrong direction, you know, because maybe it's just experience. They haven't got experience in a certain segment. So, you know, really be able to map your journey with confidence and expert guidance saves
Yeah,
a lot of money and pain and heartache. You know, it's a big thing starting a brand and it's very personal. It makes you very vulnerable because you put so much passion and hard work into it as well as funding. So really understanding the landscape is massively important. But good luck to everybody out there that you know has got it out of the gate, got past those initial hurdles. But yeah, this next stage is actually sometimes the hardest. You know, that scaling your brand is sometimes the hardest. So doing it with knowledge is really helpful.
But everybody listening out there, anybody who's trying to get help with the brand, the strategy, launching it in different countries, India to UK, UK to India, and things like that, I'm sure you should be more than convinced already that Noel is definitely somebody who can help, comes with wealth of experience. And I'm going to talk to some of my brands as well, Noel, to introduce you to them, because I think it's everybody's benefit to kind of work together and solve for. It's a big problem to solve, but also has huge benefits. And with you helping them out, the journey will have less bumpy rides in it.
Yes, yes. It's always a bumpy ride, but less bumpy ride.
That's what I said. Less bumpy ride. I'm a founder as well, so I know that, Noel. There's nothing known as perfect life. It's
If
always
it's going
bumpy.
smoothly, probably something's wrong. But
Something.
thank
Yeah.
you so much
Yeah.
for having me. It's really great, and I think it's such an interesting space and opportunity. Thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Noel, and looking forward to hosting you again. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye bye.